Hello and welcome to the fourth and final video in the Lesser Known Gruhabhedam series. So let's jump right in. Here's the song that I want to talk about today. So this is from the film Singaravelan, atrocious film, but that's a discussion for a different day. The popular view is that the song is based on the scale of Charukesi, right? Now, unlike with the Lalita case that I talked about in the previous video, here I'm not the contrarian. I also very much hear this song as based on Charukesi. But I want to talk about how a cousin of mine hears this song. And this case is again a little similar to the Lalita case because again, it's a scalar ragam, meaning, it's just a ragam based pretty much on the notes without very unique phrases or, usages or prayogams. And it's also another case of how, there can be a counter to the popular view, right? So first let's talk about what makes a Charukesi. So what makes a Charukesi is if you heard the notes as sa, if you placed your sa there, right? Sa, pa, sa, sa, ga, ga, ma, ga, ga, ri, ri, sa, sa, ni, ni, ri, sa, da, da, ni, da, pa. Ga, ma, pa, da, pa, da, pa, da, pa, da, pa. Ga, ma, pa, ni, da, da. Pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ga, ga, ma, ga, ga, ri, ri, sa, sa, ni, ni, ri, sa, da, ni, da, pa. Right, so that's Charukesi. So, but here's the other possibility, the other option, right? What if you placed your sa over there? Sa. Then the notes of the song would become sa re ga ma ma da da ni da da pa pa ma ma ga ga pa ma re ga ga ma ga ri sa da ni sa re sa re sa re sa re sa da ni sa ga re sa re ga ma ma da da ni da da pa pa ma ma ga ga pa ma re ga ga ma ga ri sa. So what ragam is this? Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. So just going by the scale, this would be Natakapriya in the Carnatic tradition. But of course, it's not Natakapriya. The ragam, it's Natakapriya, the scale, and the difference is huge. Natakapriya has a very special way in which to render the Gandharam. So, so the first half of the scale is similar to Todi. So, of course, you don't have all that here, right? This is just the scale rendered plainly. Natakapriya, the ragam, on the other hand, is more like Sari ga ya ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. So this is not Natakapriya. I'm not claiming that this song can also be interpreted as Natakapriya, but it aligns with the scalar notes. Now there's a raga in the Hindustani tradition called Parmeshwari, and that was a finding of Pandit Ravi Shankar. And that is nothing but the Natakapriya scale minus the Panchamam. Sa re ga ma da ni sa sa ni da ma ga re sa. So because Hindustani doesn't have that kampitam, that heavy ga gamakam that I just showed you a few minutes ago. This song can be said to be more aligned with the Hindustani version of Natakapriya. And to my knowledge, Parmeshwari comes the closest. I don't know if Natakapriya, the Sampurna, the entire scale of Natakapriya has an equivalent in Hindustani. As I said, Parmeshwari is missing the Pancham. But just like Jogeshwari and Pancham Jogeshwari, maybe we can call this Pancham Parmeshwari. And I don't know, like if there's a raga in Hindustani that is the equivalent of Natakapriya scale, let me know. But anyway, long story short, this song can also, equally legitimately be in this raga, whatever it is, right? The Natakapriya scale. So that's basically the main point of this video. This being the last video, I want to talk about a commonality in all the 4 cases that I've taken so far. So be it in the very first case, it was Rageshri versus something like Khamaj. The second one was Natakurunji and Natakurunji versus Neelambari. And the third one, it was Lalita versus Maladharani. And now here it is Charukesi versus Natakapriya scale. What is very interesting is that there's something that all 4 have in common. And that is Gruhabhedam that you obtain by using the sa-ma relationship, right? So here, in this case, if we took the sa of Charukesi to be the ma, then what we get is Parmeshwari, right? Or vice versa, the or the pa of Charukesi as the sa, we get Parmeshwari. So I've referenced this beautiful lecture demonstration given by Vidushi Gayatri of Ranjani Gayatri on the topic of Gruhabhedam in one of my earlier videos, and I'm going to link that once again in the description if you missed it earlier. She actually talks about this. This sa-ma relationship is very special, and she calls it a reciprocal relationship. So you can find lots of examples of Gruhabhedam exploiting the sa-ma relationship. If you take the sa of a particular ragam as the ma, you get a very clear case of a Gruhabhedam relationship. So again, likewise in Lalita, so once again we're taking the ma of Lalita as the sa, which yields that other ragam that I discussed, Maladharani. So if you go back to the other 2 videos as well, Neelambari and Natakurunji also have the sa-ma relationship. Rageshwari and that Khamajish, whatever you want to call it, that also has the sa-ma relationship. So this Shadjam Madhyam relationship is really special. The 4th note has a very special relationship with the first one in Indian classical music. And I just want to make one final point before signing off. In all 4 cases that I've discussed in this series, I've talked about Gruhabhedam in a very specific context. It is the context of perception. It's the context of how different people can perceive a raga to be in how different people can perceive a given song to be in different ragas. But there is another very, very important aspect or facet of Gruhabhedam that I haven't talked about at all, which is not really about the perception of the listener, but about the composer. Now, there are several instances of composers, of musicians deliberately exploiting this concept of Gruhabhedam. So here it's not so much about, you come up with something and then the listener interprets it as something, right? It's not that here. It's more about a very deliberate, conscious use of the idea of Gruhabhedam to make musically interesting and fascinating constructions. So I'll leave you with very brief discussions of two such cases by Ilayaraja. I've written long blog posts on both of these, so I'm going to link those in the description so you can read those if you're interested for further for a detailed explanation. So and of course it's very common in the I shouldn't say very common, but it's quite common on the Carnatic stage as well to for musicians to exploit this concept of Gruhabhedam in a very deliberate, conscious way, when they're doing any kind of manodharma, whether it's during the alapana or the swaram or neraval. But anyway, since I've been talking about film songs here, I want to talk about film or non-Carnatic pieces where the composer has very deliberately used this idea of Gruhabhedam. So one is the song Aasai Adhigam Vechu. So that one, again, it's common knowledge that it's based on Sindhu Bhairavi, right? At least for the most part.
Aasai Adhigam Vechu manasa olichu vekalama yemama alamayaki puttu alaga olichu vekalama yemama.
And the interesting things, of course, this part is clearly Sindhu Bhairavi, but the interesting things happen in the interludes and in the beginning of the charanam. So the charanam goes like na 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 na. So if you take your sa as sa, and that's how I think most of us that's where I think most of us would naturally place the sa, right? Because it has this really upbeat, nice, vibrant, major scale kind of feel. But if you took your sa as sa, then it would, as in that sa is the same as the sa for the Sindhu Bhairavi parts. So if you retained your sa at that same position, then the notes would be saga sadada padani ni pagaga saga sadada padani ni. Now, even if you associate these notes, it seems like a force fit, right? These notes belong to Sindhu Bhairavi, but then it doesn't really sound like Sindhu Bhairavi. So that's what I meant when I said this is this is different from the rest of the the four cases that I've talked about so far. This is not just about the listener interpreting it in one way or the other. Here, I think it's pretty unanimous. Everybody would just say that's not Sindhu Bhairavi. There's some change going on in that part, and that's the genius of Raja. What he's done there is, if you want to, you can associate that part with the Sindhu Bhairavi scale, but it's not going to sound like Sindhu Bhairavi because it's a very deliberate Gruhabhedam construction where he intentionally wants to show the contrast, wants to show the change between the two ragas. And once again, this is something that Gayatri talks about in that Legdon video. There's no point if you set out to do Gruhabhedam deliberately, but then the two ragas sound exactly the same, then there's no point in doing Gruhabhedam, right? When the contrast is seen, that's what makes it a lot more interesting, and that's what Carnatic musicians do on the stage for the most part. So the second case that I wanted to talk about was, of course, no surprise, once again, it's a piece by Ilayaraja. It's a piece from his album Nothing But Wind. So there's this amazing piece in that album based on Rag Malcounts or Hindolam. I think it's the title track, but I'm not sure. The title of each track, as given on the cassette that I had with me, and the titles that I find on YouTube or other online sources, there's a big mismatch. So I don't really know what this piece is called, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the really long, I think maybe 15-16 minute piece based, and that starts with Malcounts. A few minutes into the track, it gets into Hamsanandi. once again, it really took me a while to understand that was actually Gruhabhedam and not like some sort of random change of Raga and Shruti. So very quickly, I'll just explain the relationship between the Gruhabhedam relationship between Hindolam and Hamsanandi. So Hindolam goes sa ga ma da ni sa ni da ma ga sa. Now, as is a prerequisite for Gruhabhedam, you change the position of your Shadjam. But here, instead of moving your Shadjam to one of the notes that already belong to the scale, you move your Shadjam to a note that is outside of the scale, right? So, in the case of Hindolam, what happens if you retain the ga, ma, da, ni as it is, but move your Shadjam to ni 3 or the Kakali Nishadam that does not belong to the scale? So, then what happens? Sa ni da ma ga sa ni da ga ma ni da ma ga da ni sa ga ma ni da ni sa. So if you move your sa to that position that does not belong to the scale, the Hindolam scale, that is actually the Kakali Nishadam in this Shruti, right? But you're moving your sa to that note. Sa. Then the beauty is, the ga, ma, da, ni of Hindolam still remain ga, ma, da, ni. But then they become the ga, ma, da, ni of the other variety. So for instance, ni 2 becomes ni 3. Ma 1 becomes ma 2 and so on, right? That's because the Shadjam has shifted just by half a step. So correspondingly, each of the ga, ma, da, ni shift by half a step. And what happens to the original Shadjam? Now that becomes the lower Ri. Sa ni da ma ga ni da ma ga ri sa da ni sa ga ma ni da ni sa na 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 na. So it's just so incredible. When I had this revelation, I just wanted to scream. So with that, I'll end this video and the series. As I said, I'm adding links to the various videos that I've talked about. They're going to be in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching each of these videos, liking them, leaving comments on them. It's really great to hear from like-minded people. So thank you once again. See you.